everybody. This is Steve Powell. I'm the president and CEO of President's Council. This is the second edition of our pre-2024 National Hardware Show International Exhibitors Education format. Our guest today is a living legend in the global DIY industry. I know that would probably make Jim a little bit uncomfortable here, but he's a humble guy. He's had 50 years in retail, going back to the starting days of Home Depot as executive VP of merchandising, and really has had a worldwide effect through the consulting with companies he's done, like Sodimac and Hornbach. You'll see his influence in pretty much any sizable DIY market in the world, whether it's Europe or South America or Asia. Jim's going to take us through a overview of the American market. One of the things that I really want to stress here is that as you folks that are looking to get into the U.S. DIY market, Jim, he's a retailer and not necessarily an author, but he is an author now. He's got a book. I don't know if you can see it here. It's probably not coming through real great. It's called Breakthrough Retailing: How Bleeding Orange Culture Can Change Everything. The author is Jim Inglis. That's Jim Inglis. It's available at Amazon. I bought my copy. I've read it a couple times now. Jim, I'm going to make you the host so you can go ahead and take these guys through the presentation. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Steve.
Okay, you should be the host. You can go ahead and begin. I will try to keep quiet.
All right. Well, it's I guess an honor to be called a living legend, but at my age, the actionable word is living, which is a good thing. So let me kind of give you an overview of the U.S. market. I understand that one of the purposes is to make a lot of both vendors and retailers from outside the U.S. to be aware of some of the intricacies of this market and some of the opportunities in this market. So let me start with giving you just a 40,000-foot view of the North American market for home improvement and building materials, which is a $900 billion market. It really consists, the North American market consists of three countries: Canada, the United States, and Mexico. About 85% of that volume is, of course, in the United States, with 15% in the neighboring countries. And that's the total market for building materials and home improvement. If we bring that down to the DIY market, to the homeowner market, what you see is the number that, again, the Global Home Improvement Network uses is a $460 billion number in North America. And you can compare that, for example, to the 221 billion, these are euros actually, 221 billion euro market in Europe. So what you see is that the North American market is more than double the total volume potential of Europe. And of course, one of the other factors is that the North American market is somewhat more concentrated, whereas the European market is much more fragmented in terms of dealers and retail operations. Mm-hmm. So what you see in the U.S. is that it's a very positive market. There's a lot of good things happening in the home improvement market. One of the issues is the age of the homes. The average home now in the U.S. is 42 years old, and you see that on the chart on the left. The chart on the right shows that the largest portion of home improvement dollars spent is in homes that are in fact 40 years and older. So that's a good thing for the home improvement business. The next chart shows the growth over time of the size of American homes, that the long run term is for larger and larger homes. And then once again, if you look at the chart on the right, what you see is that in fact, it is the larger homes that logically require the larger amount of repair and maintenance. Another good thing for the home improvement industry. Another important factor in the U.S. is that people are more and more wishing to stay in their home and age in place. And of course, this then creates a large market for home improvement. Just yesterday, we completed the installation of an elevator in my house, specifically thinking about how to make the house better for aging in place. What we see over the past 3 years in particular is there's been a rapid growth in the value of American homes, where there's been a 40% increase in the value of the homes, and therefore the equity that the customers have now averages about over $200,000 per home. This provides an incentive for people to improve their home, but it also provides borrowing power to do those bigger projects. So what you see in the US is that there's 3 very distinctive forms of retailing to the home improvement market. First of all, you have the big box home centers, which focus on repair, remodel, and maintenance. You have the small hardware stores, which focus on repair and maintenance. And then you have what we would call in the US lumber yards, but what you would call in Europe builder merchant yards, which are primarily focused on new construction. If you look at the number of stores in the US, you'll see the chart on the left. The kind of medium blue line shows the number of small hardware stores, which is by far the largest number. But then if you look at the chart on the right, what you will see is the dollar volume from the 3 different formats. The darker blue at the top is the percent in that hardware store volume. In other words, they're the largest number of retail outlets, but they represent 13% of the volume. The lighter blue is the builder merchant yards, and then the big box home centers are the black bars, which are, of course, the major share of the market. What you see is evolved in the US is a shift in the market. In the past, let's say 40 years ago in the US and today, really currently in many markets in Europe, you find that home centers are focused strictly on the DIY business, and the builder merchants obtain literally all the volume from the pro customers. But what has evolved in the US is that the home center market focuses on the repair, remodel, and maintenance of single-family homes for the DIY and the pro. And they've taken a lot of that remodeling business away from the lumber yards or builder merchants. And so what you see is an evolution of the builder merchant market to being much more focused on the new construction business. So that's a significant shift in how the professional customers purchase their products. It distinguishes between the remodeling contractor and the new construction contractor. So what we see in the big box stores is that Home Depot is clearly the dominant player with over 60% of the market. Last year, their volume in the United States was $157 billion. Lowe's is in second place with $95 billion. And then there's a third player called Menards, and they are also a major player at $13 billion.
Nobody really knows on that number, huh?
Right. Well, yes, that's true. That's Menards is a privately held company. So anything we say about Menards is a wild ass guess. So let's zero in on Home Depot for a moment. And I think what's really interesting about Depot is in addition to doing 157 billion, which is far above any other home improvement retailer in the world, just in the last 3 years, their increase in business, just their increase, has been $47 billion. Their average store does $68 million per year. They have an EBIT of over 15%, an operating profit of 16%, a net profit of 11%, a return on capital of 46%. In other words, this is a very high productivity retailer. What's interesting is that if you look at their growth over the last 9 years, they've had 100% growth in their total volume from a $78 billion retailer to a $157 billion retailer. And they've done it with only a 2.7% increase in stores, which means that the average store volume has greatly increased which means that the stores have become much more productive and much more effective in gaining market share. One of the reasons for Home Depot's incredible growth has been their ability to significantly grow the pro business, that repair, remodeling, maintenance pro customer. So it works out today that roughly 10% of their actual customer base, which is the pro customer, contributes 50% of their total volume. So like Home Depot says, when you're a pro, time is money, and Home Depot's committed to saving you both. And that is the advantage of the big box home center, is that under one roof, they are really focused on how to save that customer time. Another huge advantage of Home Depot is their technological advantage. If you go to their pro app, you find that they have an incredible amount of tools available to their pro customer in terms of electronic catalog, looking up store inventories, managing projects, managing their credit, looking at their purchase history, finding reference charts on how to do a better job, how to place an order 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, how to find products in the store, how to set up delivery. Interesting chart on the right shows when a DIY customer decides that they want to research a project on the internet, where do they go? Number one is Amazon at 31%, Home Depot second at 29%, Lowe's is third at 24%. But when you look at when you ask the pro, where do you go to do research for a project? Home Depot jumps to number one with 48%, Lowe's with 42%, and Amazon drops down to 10%. So you see the incredible importance of technology when it comes to that pro customer. One of the things that Depot is doing to grow that pro business is making major investments in their logistics. They've committed $1.2 billion to a 5-year program to create a whole series of DCs that provide, let's call them large carton products, such as appliances, with white glove delivery into the home, and also huge master flatbed distribution centers, 800,000 square meter facilities, for delivering commodity building materials to the job site for that professional customer. Another huge pro initiative for Depot, which is proved to be a very profitable part of Depot's business, is an expansion of their tool rental business and their truck rental business, which they feel is a competitive advantage for them with the pro customer. Depot has an incredible presence online in that they're the number 5 retailer in the United States in online sales. And the chart on the right here shows their growth, which peaked, of course, during the pandemic in fiscal year 20 with 14.4%. Today, in the last quarter, it's running about 12.2%. But still, that's a very, very healthy number, representing almost $20 billion in retail sales. If you look at the supply chain of Depot, what you'll see is that they offer well over 1 million SKUs, of which only 40,000 are in the store. About 100,000 are in their own DCs, but the vast majority of the products that are offered are in fact online, and those products are in fact primarily filled through the vendor's distribution network. And the model that Depot uses is the drop ship model, where they take title to the goods and set the pricing, select those vendors, and totally control the flow of product. That's opposed to, let's say, the Amazon digital marketplace, where it's a much looser control over the brand, over the quality, and over the pricing. Depot has made a number of e-commerce acquisitions. Some of them focus on the DIY customer, but 2 of them, HD Supply and Interline, focused on the pro customer, again, growing that pro business. And this is primarily a B2B business for the multifamily dwellings and for commercial structures. We see that Depot is a leader in technology. They are able to provide their store personnel with an incredible array of information to help their customers that are on handheld devices that each employee is able to very quickly provide a wide range of information to the customers to enhance that shopping experience. They also, of course, are very advanced in using data analytics. They purchased their primary supplier of data analytic data, which was called Black Locus. And they are evaluating 1.7 trillion data points a week to provide strategic direction to their merchandising and store operating people. And of course, they have a very active program with the largest university here in Atlanta, which is the home base for Home Depot, where they have graduate students working on how to bring the next level of technology into the retail environment. There are some challenges in the US that are affecting all home centers, and particularly Home Depot. And the biggest one is a theft problem. And what you'll see in the US today is a lot more product being locked up in the stores, and a redesign of the stores in terms of entrance and exits in order to try to slow down the theft, which has become a $1 billion problem for Home Depot. This is driven by organized crime, who has very easy way of fencing this product through the internet and through other methods. And that's complicated by very weak enforcement of laws by government agencies who have taken a very lax position in policing crime. The top picture you'll see here, if you look in the right-hand top corner, you'll see a Home Depot employee laying on the ground while a customer is, or a non-customer, is taking 3 pressure washers out of the store, stealing 3 pressure washers. That employee later did die. That's how serious this problem is. Another problem that I think Home Depot has to address is that if you look at the chart on the left, it shows the pros' preference for shopping at Home Depot, which is a major advantage with the pro customer. On the other hand, if you look at the right-hand chart, what you see is when you ask the DIY customers, where is your favorite place to get products for your home? Home Depot does not fare as well. In fact, Ace Hardware, the largest chain of independent hardware stores in the United States, comes out on top of that survey. And I guess the third problem that that Depot will face is that they have a focus on growing that pro business, but at the same time, the amount of pro customers is declining as people retire out of the market, and as there's a deficiency in people coming into the market to do trade jobs. And you can see on the right, one of the ways that Depot is addressing this is to begin starting an educational program to bring more people into the trade industry.
It feels like we've been talking about that for a long time, Jim. The lack of people coming into the trades.
You know, it's a big problem, and it starts with, you know, frankly, our public education has not been adequate in trade journals. I remember when I was a young man in school, we had shop, and we learned trades in high school. You don't see that anymore, and it's really falling now on industry, private industry, to try to fill that gap, and it's a crying need in our society, that's for sure. So, you know, just to kind of summarize on Home Depot, when you say, well, what does Home Depot do, or what is Home Depot's policies, or how did Home Depot succeed, you really have to look at 3 different periods. One is the initial period of the first 20 years of rapid growth when they became the dominant player in the country under the original founders. And then there was a 7-year period where Home Depot actually lost a lot of market share and had a real serious threat to their culture with a new management team that came in from the outside. And then there's sort of been a revival since then of incredible increase in productivity. And as Steve mentioned at the start of our discussion, if you'd like to read more about it, my book, Breakthrough Retailing, gives you a good overview of how all that developed.
He also does a really good job of going through the buying process and the thought process to get in the minds of a U.S. DIY merchant. I think I mean, to understand who you're selling to, you have to be able to put yourself in that person's shoes. And I think that book does as good of a job as I've ever seen in being able to help you get up to speed on that.
Yeah, well, thank you, Steve. And it is focused from a merchandising standpoint. That's the focus of the book, is what is the culture of the book, and how do you empower your merchants to delight your customers? So let's talk briefly about Lowe's. If you look at the average Home Depot, it's a $68 million per year on average store. Lowe's on average does about $48 million per year per store. A lot of that is, in fact, the difference in the pro customer base. Lowe's, however, is a very viable company and a very fast-growing company as well. In the 9 years that Home Depot grew 100%, Lowe's grew 74%. So they're still a rapid growth company. They did it with a 24% increase in stores. So once again, you see they don't have the per store productivity that Home Depot does. But if you took Home Depot out of the picture, you would say Lowe's is a very viable company and a very powerful company within the U.S. home improvement market.
Seems like they've been number 2 in the market for about 60 years.
Actually, the truth of the matter is that Home Depot started in 1980, and Lowe's was the number 1 home improvement.
Yeah, it was them and Wix back in those days, if I remember correctly.
And what happened in 1988? 1988 is when Home Depot passed Lowe's, and Lowe's has been playing catch up ever since.
Yep.
So another thing that is very much impacting Lowe's is, because they are not as productive as Depot, they have begun to look at their total retail operation and trying to figure out how to become more productive. And that has meant removing themselves from many markets. They had 13 stores in the Mexican market, which they have now left that market. They had 90 what you would call super hardware stores in the United States called Orchard Supply. They closed those stores. They had 470 stores in the Canadian market, and just within the last year, they took a $2.7 billion write-off and sold all of those stores to an investment company.
I think they're going back to Rona, right? They're all going to be.
They're all under the Rona brand. Well, they're becoming under the Rona brand today. That's correct. They're still in that transition in Canada. And then, of course, they entered the Australian market a few years ago with 60 stores, and after a couple of years in that market, left that market. So they have really been in retreat on an international basis, trying to refocus on productivity in their domestic market. Their stated goal is that they want to drive more pro business. They want to accelerate their online business. They want to expand their installation services, become more localized in their merchandising assortments, and to improve their product mix for the pro. Frankly, those are all the things that Depot is already doing and doing very well. And so what you see is that Lowe's recognizes their weakness and is focusing on trying to make that improvement. What has happened over the past year is that they have made some improvement. They've grown their pro business 10%. They've grown their online business 5%, but that's still on a much smaller base than the Home Depot. For 2023, they are projecting flat to -2% sales growth. So I would say today they are still struggling to find that formula that gives them the productivity of Home Depot and the kind of growth they really need. What you see is they've made major investments in technology. The building on the left is a building they just opened this year, which is their technology center, which is set up to handle 2,000 tech employees to develop new technologies. We don't really see a lot of that in the stores today, so it'll be interesting to see how this evolves over the next few years. The third player in the big stores market is Menards. And as Steve said, we don't know a lot about Menards. Menards is privately held, and it's run by a gentleman named John Menard, who doesn't share very much information with the industry. What you see,
he's a very interesting guy, though. I mean, he built that company from a roadside pole building business. He's an interesting character. He's a titan in the industry.
yeah, I think if you look in the dictionary Menard under entrepreneur, you'll see his picture.
Yeah.
So the thing about Menards is they are not nationwide like Lowe's, like Depot, but they are very strong in the upper Midwest. And we see that they are continuing to expand that footprint each year, going into additional states in the middle of the country. One of the reasons for that, of course, is that they are privately held. Another is that they're very vertically integrated.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're vertically integrated, they're able to offer, for instance, whole home packages, whole barn packages, whole garage packages, to a degree that Lowe's and a Home Depot really can't. They do a lot of their own pressure treating of wood. They're much more vertically integrated. So that creates an incentive to be more centralized in terms of their geographical location. And as such, they're very effective in offering these total packages to the customer. So these are very, very interesting stores to see. John Menard is 81 years old. It'll be interesting to see, what happens in the future with that company, whether it stays private or goes public. But for sure, it is a very powerful format. The store you see in this picture is basically a two-story store that I don't know. I liken it to a cathedral. You walk in and it's so overpowering. It's awesome, and I'm sure the customers get that same feeling. So it's an interesting store to visit. If you're in the U.S. and you get up in that Midwest area, you definitely want to visit the Menard stores.
They're really impressive in logistics as well. I mean, I think that's the reason that they're building at the geographic rate that they're building is to DC and then the stores that can serve it. And they're very impressive.
Yeah. It'll be, like I say, it'll be very interesting to see how they continue to expand. I think they will. One other last thing about the U.S. market is that in addition to the three formats I told you about, which is the big box store, the hardware store, and the builder merchant, there are some unique specialty stores, and there's a few of them that are uniquely successful in the U.S. And the first is an operation called Tractor Supply. They have over 2,000 stores in the U.S., but all of their stores are in the rural market. You don't see their stores in the metropolitan markets. You see them on the edge of the metropolitan markets. And in addition to their 2,000 rural stores within the urban markets, they have specialty stores focused on pet supplies. And they have 180 of those stores. So they're in 49 states with the rural market, and they're in 23 states with their urban model. They're a $15 billion business, and they're rapidly growing. Over the past few years, they've been opening about 80 stores a year. They're not big stores. They're only 1,500 square meters, but they're very focused on the lifestyle of the rural customer, from everything from taking care of their animals to the clothing that they wear. Another very fast-growing retailer in the U.S. is Floor & Decor, which is a category killer when it comes to hard surface flooring. And today they have about 200 stores in the U.S. Their goal is to open 500. And they are so powerful in terms of both assortment and pricing that they are a category killer, where they can walk into a market and take market share from the home centers. They can also take market share from the independent retailers. And then finally, we have Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight has over 1,300 stores in the U.S., They specialize in tools, both hand tools and power tools. What is unique about this category killer is that they are essentially 100% private label imported product. And you would say, well, then it must be cheap tools, but actually their tools are really built to fairly high standards so that they appeal to both a homeowner as well as the professional clientele. And once again, they are rapidly growing across the US. So that's my 40,000-foot view of the US market. And I think you'll find it's a market with huge potential, but also with unique characteristics that can be challenging and require some significant investment in order to exploit. But I hope that as you visit the hardware show, you'll be inspired to bring some of your products and some of your innovations that we see around the world to the American market.
All
and
right.
Please buy my book.
I can reiterate that honestly. I mean, if you're looking to understand this market, this book is a great place to start. It's interesting on the history of Home Depot and stuff, but even much more so in understanding what motivates buyers. How they're measured, how they are. Learning to make that buyer a hero is the best thing you can do as a supplier. So
That's right.
I would strongly encourage everybody to take a look at that book. It's available on Amazon. Like I said, I bought my own copy because Jim wouldn't give me one. But thanks again. And we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay, Steve. It was nice chatting with you. Bye-bye.